Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum this Sunday night in November. It's the last one, I think. The last Sunday. I think next Sunday is actually the 1st of December, 2019. It's going to be 2020 in about 8 minutes. Have you been paying any attention to the impeachment hearings, especially this week? On Thursday morning, NBC reported a Democrat victory. A victory in regard to Ambassador Sondland's testimony that President Trump demanded a quid pro quo. For all you public school graduates, that means a this for that kind of situation. One problem, though, it didn't happen. At least not the way they would have us believe. Oh yeah, Sondland declared this quid pro quo in his 23-page opening statement. However, a few hours later, this happened. Quote, Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, testified in his opening statement before Congress that there was a quid pro quo for Ukraine to announce investigations into Burisma and the 2016 election interference that came from Rudy Giuliani at the guidance of President Trump. Sondland said in sworn testimony that Giuliani, acting at the behest of the president, communicated to Ukrainian officials that a White House call and a White House meeting between Trump and Ukraine President Zelensky was conditioned on a public statement announcing the launch of investigations by the Ukrainian government. It was going to be into Biden's son's business, what he was on the board of. As for the allegation that the release of $400 million in frozen military aid was also a precondition of the quid pro quo, Sondland stated that he later came to believe that it was repeatedly claiming this belief as his presumption. This presumption, however, was based on being convinced that 2 + 2 equals 4. Now, in summary, Sondland claimed that 3 items, a White House call from Trump to Zelensky, a meeting between Trump and Zelensky, and the release of military aid to Ukraine, were conditioned on Ukraine making a public statement announcing investigations. In the subsequent questioning by Representative Jordan, we watched this exchange. Ambassador, when did it happen? Sondland retorted, when did what happen? The announcement. When did President Zelensky announce that the investigation was going to happen? Referencing Sondland's opening remarks, where he outlined that the call and meeting and the aid were conditioned on just such a public announcement. Sondland acknowledged simply, never did. Never did, Jordan repeated emphatically. They got the call July 25. They got the meeting, not in the White House, but in New York on September 25. They got the money on September 11. I mean, you got all 3 of them wrong, Jordan argued. They get the call, they get the meeting, they get the money. It's not 2 + 2. It's 0 for 3. Of course, NBC must have missed that exchange. They never reported it. But, those things happen. Did you also know that during the impeachment inquiry testimony of George Kent, a senior State Department official, it was revealed that State Department Assistant Secretary Victoria Nuland worked with the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, in the late 2015s to create a plan to, quote, force the firing of Ukrainian Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin. Nuland was also among a network of Obama administration officials involved in the distribution and recirculation of the infamous Steele dossier, the document used by the FBI to secure an overtly intrusive spy warrant to surveil a Trump campaign associate. Kent told investigators on October 15, quote, my understanding is that the conversations that were near daily between Ambassador Pyatt and Victoria Nuland regarding what to do on the way forward included pitching the office of the vice president to push President Poroshenko to remove Shokin. Biden ultimately carried out Nuland's plan during a visit to Ukraine in December 2015 and has since bragged on at least 2 occasions about forcing Shokin's firing by threatening to cut off loan guarantees. At the same time, Biden exerted pressure on Ukraine. Shokin, as was investigating Burisma, the Ukrainian gas giant that was paying Hunter Biden to serve on its board of directors. The Ukrainian president asked for Shokin's resignation 2 months after Biden's overture. The Ukrainian parliament approved the resignation on March 29, 2016. Later this week, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani spoke with Glenn Beck, talking about the special bureau set up in Ukraine to root out corruption. The U.S. diplomats were doing the bidding of billionaire philanthropist George Soros in Ukraine in, quote, massive pay-for-play scheme that included falsifying evidence against President Trump. He said the Anti-Corruption Bureau is a contradiction. They took all the corruption cases away from the Prosecutor General. They gave them to the Anti-Corruption Bureau, and that bureau got rid of all the cases that offended Soros and included all the cases against Soros' enemies. Don't you just love politics? Liberal attorney Jonathan Turley, appearing on CBS News' special report, said, I'm open to discussions about whether the quid pro quo or bribery terminology evolution has legal merit. But I also get the sense that if you're trying to remove a duly elected president from office, his high crimes ought to be so self-evident that a midstream rhetorical adjustment wouldn't make much of a difference. A very sketchy basis is how Representative John Ratcliffe described the so-called bribery evidence shortfall during yesterday's morning questions session testimony, in which he turned the term back against the Democrats. Despite the fact that the quid pro quo fiasco dominated the day, the mainstream media simply ignored it. And it appears everyone is ignoring the corruption of the previous Ukrainian administration that Zelensky was elected to clean up. In addition to the clearly immoral appointment of Vice President Biden's son to a board of trustees governing a corrupt business in Ukraine, for which he was paid a handsome salary, doing a job he was not qualified to do, this president wanted assurances that the Zelensky was the real deal, that he really would clean out the corruption. Trump wanted to have some assurances that our free money to Ukraine would be used wisely, and if it included investigating the clear corruption that included the son of a potential political rival, so much the better. So we have a 3+ year investigation into Trump. No investigation into what the Russians might have been doing. No investigations into Hillary's personal email server. No investigations into Biden's obvious blackmail of the Ukrainian government. No investigations into the illegal use of government agencies to further personal gain. And no investigations into the mountain of immoralities and illegalities of the Clinton administration. A scandal that involves not only political activities, but sexual activities and more. For example, incriminating documents suddenly missing from White House aide and former legal partner of Hillary's office, immediately after finding his dead body in a park. A man who took his own life for unknown reasons, unknown to us. Books have been written about the body count surrounding the Clintons, probably coincidental and propagated for personal gain by the authors. But how many of your friends and your acquaintances have died under mysterious circumstances? The point here is there's plenty to investigate if you wanted to go into the Democrats' closet. That their issues are swept under the carpet while Republicans are continually accused, suspected, is beyond the mathematical realm of possibility. You do know Bush is responsible for 9/11. We heard that several times in these investigations. And now Trump is responsible for a crime every president has committed in one way or another, namely seeking assurances that our money has not simply gone down the proverbial rabbit hole. Oh, and if it benefits Trump politically, so much the better. Only it didn't, and it hasn't. Ukraine refused to do Trump's bidding, and he got the money anyway. Don't you just love politics?